Hello and welcome to another episode of the Etiquette Guy. I'm your host, Jay Remer, and with me today I have Mary Rogers. Mary and I are going to be discussing wedding ceremony etiquette today. But before we begin, I just want to encourage all of you to become part of the CHCO TV team of volunteers and send in your questions as they come along, because we really depend on the interaction with you, our audience, to make these programs as successful as possible. So enjoy the program today, send in your questions, and welcome Mary.
Hi Jay, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. So you've got some questions that have been coming in about the wedding ceremony.
The actual ceremony itself. Dum, 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 dum.
Yeah, well, it's that time of year, isn't it? When
is
people
that
are
time.
beginning to make plans for
Yes.
summer weddings and even fall weddings.
That's true. I'd be curious to know. I suspect that most weddings happen within these next 6 months. Would you not say?
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them do.
I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a series of questions, and so with your answers, let's hope for one hitch and not several.
We'll try
okay?
not to misguide them too much.
Okay. First question that came in. I'm confused. What's the difference between a tuxedo, black tie, and formal when you receive an invitation?
Well, that's a really good question. Basically, there is no difference. So, it depends where you are.
Okay.
Now, in Britain,
Yeah.
formal actually means white tie. White tie is almost never worn over here unless it's for a state banquet or an occasion like that. It's just not done anymore. People don't have access to the gear, and they don't know how to put it on, and it is often done wrong. And so what happened was back in around the 20s, I would guess, white tie became replaced with black tie as a sort of a dressed-down version of white tie. And it all began, oddly enough, in Tuxedo Park, New York.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And
Okay.
it was the Mr. Lorillard that decided that the white tie was too much of a bother, and so he decided he basically introduced black tie, which is a dressed down version, and it stuck. So it is referred to as a tuxedo because it was created in Tuxedo Park, New York.
Okay.
But basically, black tie is the same as a tuxedo. We refer to dinner jackets over here, the get-up that goes with black tie, as a tuxedo, as though that were the name for the suit. Now, in England, it's called a dinner suit.
Okay.
So if you're in one place or another and you see those things, they're really used interchangeably.
Okay, so the tuxedo is just not for the black and white attire with the vest and the cravat and the tails.
Well, no, that's actually not a tuxedo.
Oh, okay.
That's actually morning dress.
I see.
And so that would be what you would wear to a wedding, say if you were an usher, or even if you were a groom. For a formal wedding, the ushers, and actually almost, see, this is the deal. With formal wear, if it's on the invitation that says formal or black tie, that really indicates, well, it's never done before 5 o'clock at night in the afternoon. You never wear a black tie before then. So, and that outfit is quite different than what you're referring to as the morning suit, which has tails and a vest and the ascot and all that gear. That's quite a different getup, and that would be worn only by the bridal party, and it would be worn no matter what time of day that's going to be.
Okay.
Because in Britain, for example, morning suit is worn all the way through the day until the evening, when either black or white tie would be. So you have to have a costume change.
Sure.
So, for instance, morning suits are worn to daytime weddings, or they're worn, say, to the racetrack at Ascot, or that kind of thing. So it's a daytime formal wear. Over here, it has become adapted as what you wear if you're in the wedding party as a man.
Okay.
And it's quite different than black tie. So if you were to receive an invitation over here, you don't go and rent a morning suit. You wear a tuxedo. And if you don't own one, you can go and rent them. I mean, if you don't wear them often, it almost is, you know, if this is sort of a once in a lifetime kind of a thing, like I'm never going to wear this again, just go rent one. You can rent them from lots of places. And but if you are going to wear one more than a couple of times in your life, buy one.
Okay.
I actually bought one on eBay not too long ago. I was so thrilled. I love eBay.
You were saying that.
This was a beautiful tuxedo. It was never worn.
Oh my gosh.
And it was made in Canada.
Lovely.
So it wasn't made in,
here,
you know,
here.
so
Yes.
it had some, the integrity of the tailoring may have been a little bit higher quality. And
what about the cut, though? Because cuts change over time as styles change. If you buy a tuxedo or buy a morning suit, can you be assured that the cut of it will always stay in style, or the design?
The cut doesn't change.
It doesn't. Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not talking about going and renting a tuxedo that looks like like you're going to a costume party where you wear a purple ruffled shirt and some craziness. There's a time and a place for that, but that's not what I call formal. I mean, it is what some people call formal. It's not my version.
Okay.
I think if you're going to wear a tuxedo or a dinner jacket, as it is more properly referred to, you have a white shirt. Now, the white shirt can be pleated or it can be plain.
All right.
And it can have either a straight collar or it can have, it can actually, even in America, you can have a button-down collar.
Okay.
White, like an Oxford shirt. You can wear. You don't have to have a pleated shirt. If you're going to do it right, you should have a pleated shirt.
Okay.
And that normally you wear studs with that, which can either be gold or they can even be made out of material. I mean, there are all kinds. But the actual cut of the jacket is always going to be the same. They're not going to change that. Now, you can have different styles of collar. You can have a rolled collar or a pointed collar or any kind of collar, and that's fine anytime. You know, it's a matter of personal choice. So with black tie, you do have a little bit more, sort of choices, as opposed to white tie, which is quite regimented. But I will say that if you're going to wear black tie, buy yourself a black bow tie that is not pre-tied. Tie it yourself or find someone who can tie it for you. It looks much different, and it really it separates the men from the boys, so to speak. Okay. If you wear a pin-on tie, you're basically still in short pants. You need to sort of man up a bit and either learn to tie a tie properly or find someone who can. I mean, I give those lessons all the time, and it's easy. I can do it in my sleep. But it's a matter of practice.
Yes,
you know, I mean, if you're not used to it. I mean, I wasn't born knowing how to tie a bow tie, but I learned fairly quickly. And I also know, I mean, there's a tale that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth can spot across a football field whether or not the tie is tied by hand or
by factory.
Or and you don't want to be in that last group.
No.
Yeah. Better to be in that group than no group at all, however. So does that kind of straighten things out a little bit?
Sure, I think so. Very interesting. I like the reference about the Tuxedo Park. I didn't know there was a history behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. How long should the best man speech be, and what should be included in it?
This would be at the
reception.
And if there's if there's going to be a speech, there's generally a seated dinner. It could be a stand-up cocktail reception where there's a microphone and the essential people can make toast. But I would say that it should be kept to, say, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
not any longer. You can say an awful lot in 3 minutes. My and what should be included is best wishes to the bride and groom, and maybe a little anecdote about your relationship with them. Or if you don't have a relationship with the bride, focus on the best man. I mean, on the groom. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I would say that the key to delivering a good speech is to writing it out first.
Okay.
And I mean write it on a piece of paper, and 3 minutes can be, in 3 minutes you can deliver 3 typed pages of double-spaced of writing, typed. So that's how long it takes to do it. It's about a minute a page.
Okay.
So that gives you the amount. Now what you do once you've got it written, then you have to practice it.
Yes.
And practicing delivering a speech is critical. Even if you're going to read it off the page, which I think it's good to have the notes.
The little cue cards, recipe cards, perhaps, like little.
It depends.
Cue?
If I am the kind of person that speaks spontaneously. I'm sort of the ad lib guy.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who are terrified. The idea of getting up in front of 6 people, forget about 600, and delivering a speech can really cause tremendous stress. And so for those people, you're going to be much more comfortable if you've practiced this.
Yes.
And practice it at least 6 times. People like to have directions. So write it, practice it at least 6 times, and practice it by yourself. You don't have to do this in front of your mother or somebody who's going to add pressure. Do it in a quiet room, and if there's a mirror, that's all the better, because you can watch yourself speak. And after you've done it 6 times, the difference between your first delivery and your 6th delivery will be noticeable. And you can go on and practice it a bit more if you want to. Or if there are certain words or combinations of words that are going to trip you up, either rewrite it or practice it enough times so that it comes right out clearly.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would say limit it to 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The old guideline for making toasts generally is begin, be brief, be seated.
There.
Those are the 3.
Excellent advice out there.
But that's for a toast.
Best
Now,
yeah.
a best man is going to make a small speech. Keep it to 3 minutes.
Keep it to 3 minutes. Okay.
Toasts can be limited to 1 minute quite easily.
Okay. Now let's go to let's get back to the church. Okay, there's another question here about the best way to distribute wedding programs. Should they be left on a table, or is this something that maybe is the responsibility of an usher?
The wedding programs should be handed out to people as they enter the church. Okay. It is the job of an usher. However, there are, it's interesting when you're putting together responsibilities for weddings. Sometimes there are people who you wish to have included somehow, but they can't be in the bridal party because there's just not enough spots.
Okay.
And so that's the kind of job that you can give to someone. Now you can give it to, you can give that to actually a young girl or a young man.
Yeah,
I mean, once they get to be about the age of 8, they should be able to handle giving out a program. And so it can either be done by the ushers, or if you are looking for a job for someone else, it can be done then. But leaving it on the table that's just, why bother?
Yes, okay.
It's almost like throwing them in the seats ahead of time, like it's not. At a formal wedding, it was absolutely be not done. So and so the usher would take the female of the couple, would by the arm, so he offers his right arm. They walk down the aisle, followed by the husband or whoever the male partner might be. Now, in the event of 2 women coming in as a couple, there would require either 1 usher taking 1 on each arm, or 2 ushers taking them each in. With 2 men, there would be no on the arm. It would be just follow me.
Yes. Okay.
And then you're seated that way.
You're seated.
Yeah.
Now, I have a very interesting question that's come up. I'm curious to know about this. What happens if the bride and groom are just ready to say their vows in front of the minister, justice of the peace, and one of them changes their mind and says, I just absolutely can't go through with this. What happens? Like, how would somebody, or whose responsibility is for it to take over the ceremony at that time?
That is, that's a very awkward situation.
I should say.
But it can happen.
Yes.
Being jilted at the altar is not someone anybody would wish on their worst enemy.
No.
It would be, I mean, I don't know from firsthand experience what that's like, and I've never actually witnessed it. I did see it on Downton Abbey. But,
oh, yes.
and you do hear about these things. It's kind of like the you know, when the minister says, is there anybody here that objects, you know, which is really, it's a legal obligation.
Sure.
And if it turns out that there is a reason, then that's the time when you need to, you can still pull the plug. You can pull the plug right up to the I do. I think it's very poor form. Oh. You should know well in advance. And frankly, I would say that if you were the other person, aside from being horribly shocked and hurt initially, it should send up a little red flag of relief, because like if this isn't the kind of thing you want to get involved with. But to answer the question, who's in charge? It's the minister who's in charge.
The minister.
They take over, and what they do is going to be dictated by the moment.
Sure.
You know, it would be a very spontaneous thing, but and hopefully it doesn't happen very often. But so the minister would be in charge. It would not be the responsibility of anybody else.
No. Okay.
And if you're a guest at a wedding and that kind of thing happens,
yes,
oohing and ahhing and carrying on and gasping is probably not the thing to do. You just sit there quietly in complete and utter amazement and wish
silently
you were somewhere else. And the minister will take over, and he probably will withdraw the couple into you know,
a separate room
back
or something. Yes.
And maybe sort of sort out what's going on here, or you know, if there's huge drama and either the bride or the groom just tear down the aisle singly, well, then you just let them do that. But hopefully there's some at the other end to sort things out. But it's a terribly horrible experience for everyone involved.
Oh,
so
no question.
It's a time when compassion really needs to be pulled together, and there's obviously a tremendous amount of fear, pain, awkwardness, everything involved is incredibly stressful. So having compassion at moments like that is really the most important thing to do, and let the minister, who is really the officiate of the occasion, it's his responsibility. Yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully that we'll never experience that.
Yes,
I've never seen it. Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen it to the degree of the wedding, but a couple of days before I have.
I mean,
had
there are
not personal experience. Oh, well, personal in that it was a friend of mine, but not personal in terms of it happening.
I suppose there are
to me,
plenty of us that could look back and say, "I wish I
had. I wish that had happened."
But you know what?
Oh,
I do think about that. I mean, I am human, and I do think about these things every once in a while for my own self. And I think, you know what, though, if I hadn't said I do and gone through everything that I went through, I wouldn't be exactly where I am today.
That's right.
And holding grudges, having regrets, and all of that is not a healthy way to live life.
No.
And so you just have to realize that you know, that there's a silver lining, and that mistakes that may have been perceived as mistakes, they may turn out to be the best decision you ever made.
That you ever made, that's right. And it's all your experiences combined that make you as your personality or who you are today or how you handle present day situations, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I wonder if we have time for one more. Do you think? Yes?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Sally here. She wants to know, am I obligated to have my stepmother in my wedding photos?
family dynamics come into play in weddings, and today there are so many, what I guess we call blended families, that the pecking order suddenly becomes very confused. You know, who's who in the zoo is not the same as it was before Susie showed up. And so I would say the short answer to your question is no. You do not have to have anybody in the wedding photo that you do not want to have.
Okay.
Now, this requires some careful thought and consideration.
Well, hurt feelings. What about
This is not about hurt feelings.
Oh, okay.
This is about establishing relationships with people who are new to the family and thinking long term. There are some families that simply, these kinds of relationships are never going to be accepted, and trying to make nice during a wedding and having someone in your wedding pictures who you really don't want in is not the way. That's not the way to make a quick fix. And so, however, the bride should really be the person to decide who's going to be with. And if she wants advice on that, then she seeks advice from her mother or whoever she seeks advice from. But then you have the problem of who's hosting the whole party.
Sure.
And so if dad is suddenly shelling out $100 grand for his daughter's wedding, or it doesn't matter really what the amount is, if somebody else is paying the bill, the assumption is that maybe they could have a little bit of say. So I think the way to handle it is to have some photographs that are sort of, okay, everybody's in.
Okay.
And they can have that photograph, and you don't have to broadcast it or have it in your wedding album.
Okay.
But I think, you know, the thing is that weddings are important ceremonies. They're important milestones. Hopefully an important milestone in one's life, not not multiple. And so it's the celebration of the occasion and the institution that need to be kept in mind. Just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean that they aren't an appropriate part of the congregation. So if you've got, and sometimes there's more than one stepmother and there's more than one stepfather, and then you've got the siblings, and you know, step sisters and step brothers come with their own baggage, and they may have a lot of baggage, and the families may not know each other that well. And I mean, it's not that dissimilar from a bride and groom who don't know whose families don't know each other. You don't know what you're getting. It's a bit of a pig and a poke, which is why you really have to, these things have to be taken seriously. And so that the question that you asked before about being jilted at the altar is something that isn't going to happen. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you've got to include people in photographs, or for instance, where in the church do people sit? Where does the stepmother sit? Where does the mother sit? And generally speaking, the mother and the father of the bride sit in the front row. Now, if they're no longer married, and if it's an acrimonious situation, the mother sits in the front row, and she can either sit with her new husband or alone, or somebody of her choice. Maybe her own mother, and then the father would sit in the second row. Okay,
so the mother then she has precedence in terms of row.
Or even women always have precedence.
Oh, I see.
Or even the third row, he could be put. It just depends. But I think that really the most important thing is for people in families who, they need to remember that this particular wedding isn't about them.
True.
It's about the bride and the groom and their union. And all energies need to be focused on celebrating that, encouraging that, and putting your own egos aside, and you have to really make it so that this is a focused on the right thing. So once you, I mean, you can see there are television shows about bridezillas and all these things where you wind up, they become bridezillas a lot of times because they're getting an awful lot of input from people that have no business giving them any input. But there are a lot of reasons why all these things happen. So I think it's really important for these weddings for people to remember that the bride this is her day, and that the focus has to be on the ceremony and the importance of this milestone in the bride and groom's life.
Yes.
So that kind of brings us to the end of our time.
Oh my heavens!
With the show, didn't that fly by?
It did.
And we covered some good material.
There's some good questions there, weren't there?
And I'd like to thank you all for watching this show, and again to encourage you to become part of the CHCO TV volunteer team and send in your questions to us and let us know what's on your mind. And if you would like to do a show of your own, or you'd like to come in and sit and be interviewed, chime right in. We'd love to have you. Thank you for watching the show. We look forward to seeing you again.